I came across this post called The Sanctuary, a 42-acre camping spot dedicated to letting campers basically seek God, to camp with God, as it were. And that's something Jesus would do. Jesus would go away to the mountains to seek solace consistently. As God in human form, he felt the pressures, the pull of this world just like we do. There's certainly a lot of that in today's day and age. And as someone who's been trying to build their prayer life and has been finding it actually quite hard, with all the distractions and just everything that we got going on, certainly in this time, I thought this was the perfect time and the perfect opportunity. So let's get going. Psalm 91:1 says, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty." To the degree that I make myself present to God, to that same degree, God will make himself present to me. James 4:8, the ESV says, "Draw near to God and he will draw near to you." Your thoughts, distracted feelings, and ambitions all swirling around can be simply silenced by taking a pause, reflecting on the moment, where you are, and just acknowledge you are letting him enter the room. It starts with the inner room. Seeking his presence means you're communicating in his language, the language of the heart. It means taking an inventory of our heart posture and keeping it open in his direction. You're willing to just dwell with him, to just sit with him, maybe not hearing anything from God, but just being in his presence because you want to abide in him. You want to dwell in him. Jesus would slip away. When Jesus went up away into the mountains, he'd slip away from the commotion, the activities of all of the disciples. He'd go and find rest. When you think about getting away, think of it as a way of recentering yourself so you can get back to work. Times away with God are supposed to help us clarify our purpose, the purpose that he has for us. Jesus did it when he went away to the mountains to rest with his Father, then so should we. One thing you'll notice, though, is that there was always some form of action that usually would follow when he would go to the mountains. He would come back and perform some miracle, gather the disciples together. We see that in Luke 6:12. We see that all over the place. I think a lot of us can be tempted to see a vacation as just a means to unwinding and decompressing. See there to be an end goal of him recentering you to where he wants to move you next, where he wants to take you, whose lives he wants you to impact. I spoke with Anthony from Awakening Adventures to hear a little bit more about what prompted him to put something like this together and hear his heart, hear some of that.
Well, yeah, like at the heart of it, it's this desire to walk with God, not just go out and make a living or do something for God, but to be with him like every day, all the time, and to know that and to help others experience that.
To a believer that, say, is coming from a background struggling with that resting with God and kind of canceling out the noise of the world, what words of affirmation or encouragement would you give that believer?
Psalm 46:10, I believe it is. Be still and know that I am God. Sometimes we just need to be comforted by God and hear his voice. We have so many things coming at us and we're just bombarded. Everybody wants our attention, especially with what's going on with AI and these tailored advertisements, and there's so much screen time, right? And it's just this opportunity to put down the screen and listen and focus and just set aside the distractions of the world, because he's available, right? He's always available, but are we available? And so this is a place where we can become available, step away from our lives for a moment and reconnect, restoration, healing, all those things. He does all those things. John 10:27, Jesus says, my sheep hear my voice and I know them and they follow me. So listening is following. So how much more does that make hearing the voice of God that much more important? Can we even follow Jesus if we're not listening? I don't think we can. So it's practicing that. It's this space to practice that and hear his voice in the still, quiet, natural environment that he's given us.
I'm going to put in the description a link to a more extended view of that conversation, and feel free to check that out as well as his YouTube page. Another good takeaway from our conversation, Anthony mentioned about no pressure. Walking into a situation like this without having pressure. I know me going into this trip, I had a lot of expectations and hopes, especially in a setting that is intended to just be, to just sit and dwell in him. It's so important that we rest in him. When Jesus went up way into the mountains, he'd come back with a clear mind and with a mission. He'd gather the disciples and he'd go out and build his kingdom. And that's something that I plan to do with this channel. Been mulling over it for some time. The Lord's really been pressing on my heart to do something, and I've for too long put it off. I hope this was an encouragement to you, and have a blessed week in Jesus.